Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. You might notice I've got a bit of a lineup of IEMs here in front of me, and that's because today we're talking about the Audiofly AF1120. If you've watched the previous reviews of the AF100 and the AF140, you'll know that Audiofly sent me 3 units to review. These are units that are on loan, so they're being sent back, and the final unit in this series is Audiofly's flagship model AF1120. Before I do get into the review, I just wanted to flag a couple of things to let viewers know that there is a giveaway occurring for the Ibasso DC01 and DC02. I'll be giving away both of those. That was the last review posted, so jump over and check it out if you're interested. And the review is happening through the Patreon page, so I'll put a link below. You can go and check that out and get involved if you'd like to win one of those. The other thing I want to let you know is I've got quite a backlog of gear to review at the moment, so just to let you know what's coming down the pipeline, we've got the Meta Empyrean headphones, I've got the Bottlehead mainline kit DIY tube amp over the back. I've also got the SML SP200 amplifier. That's one of the THX module amplifiers. That's coming up for review as well. So there's plenty of good content coming down the pipeline. If you're interested, make sure you subscribe. And obviously if you're enjoying the videos, hit the like button, but I'll let you watch the video first and then decide if you like it. Okay, so onto the good stuff. As I said at the outset, we've got the AF1120s here. So this is the flagship model from Audiofly. They retail for about $850 here in Australia, and they're a 6-driver design using a combination of 6 balanced armatures, but arranged in 3 pairs. So 2 lows, 2 mids, 2 highs. In terms of flagship monitors then, both the price and the number of drivers would suggest that maybe these are a lower tier. But what you'll find as I talk about them in a moment is they're very much not a lower tier. These things are a brilliant earphone and they deserve so much more attention. Before I explain why I think that though, let's talk a bit about the design and the accessories, etc. When you buy a pair of 1120s, you get a Pelican hard case along with them. So that's fantastic that you're getting flagship level accessories and protecting your investment when you're buying something at this level. You're also getting a nice quality cable. It's probably not as good looking as some of the cables on other flagship monitors, but it performs really well. It's tangle resistant, it's got a cloth wrap that's fantastic. I think the fact that it's white is probably the thing that detracts from its appearance a little bit and doesn't look as high end. But having said that, it does a beautiful job, and it's also probably a bit discreet. If you're walking around wearing a business suit or you're commuting to work listening to these, they tend to blend in just as well as a plain black cable does, and probably better in some ways than a flashing silver cable might. So it's a minor thing that they maybe don't look as special as the flagship status that they have within the Audiofly range, but they absolutely perform at that level. The cable is great. As I said, it doesn't tangle. It sounds fine, and it's going to last a long time. It's well built, well put together. Of course, if you're familiar with the AF140s being in the same range, the AF1120s do come with MMCX connectors that I currently can't get off, but it does come with MMCX connectors. So you've got that very versatile and changeable connector that also provides you the ability to swivel the earpieces nice and easily, which is great. Speaking of the earpieces, if you've watched the other Audiofly reviews, they've got the same teardrop shaped earpiece that is extremely comfortable to wear, very easy to insert. So they're just all around a beautifully made, beautifully designed earphone that probably doesn't look the part of being a flagship. They're very basic, they're very understated, but a lot of people are going to love that about them. I certainly enjoy being able to wear them and not have people necessarily notice that I'm using a $900 set of earphones. Just to prove that there's no faults or flaws, I've now removed that MMCX connector, and it's actually better if these are a bit tight, because if they are lower quality and they are a bit loose, I have heard stories of people losing earphones from them dropping off the end of the cable. Because the Audiofly cables are high quality and the connectors are high quality, they're a good snug fit, and you've got to deliberately, as you've just seen, deliberately remove them if you want to take them off. Before I get to the comparisons with the earphones lined up next to me here, I just want to talk about the AF1120s in their own right, in isolation for a moment, just to give an idea of the sound signature and the style of presentation. The AF1120s are presented by Audiofly. It's a very neutral sounding headphone. And I must admit, I came in with some expectations of them potentially feeling a bit lean, a bit dry, and a bit cold. But as I listen to them more and more, what I've realized is that they're just incredibly well balanced. They've got a beautiful mid-range that's able to come through because of that balance. So rather than neutrality in this case, meaning actually it's treble oriented to make you feel like you're getting extra detail, these are truly neutral in the sense that a bright recording sounds bright. A bassy recording sounds bassy, but I will talk a bit more about the bass in a moment. And the mid-range is able to sing through in each case, so you can hear all of the instruments, you can hear all of the detail, and it's highly enjoyable in that respect. The treble, in comparison to some other earphones, can sound a bit rolled off, but in isolation, as I said before, when I listen to a recording with good, clear treble recordings, a nice sparkly treble recording, these are absolutely reproducing it. So I think it's more a case that they're not emphasizing the treble, not that it's rolled off as such. The benefit is that because the mid-range hasn't got a dip in it, it's well balanced with the treble, so you're getting all of the frequencies hitting you the way they're meant to. I say all the frequencies. The one teeny tiny criticism I would have of these is that I'd like a little bit more sub-bass. They do a great job of mid-bass. They work beautifully with recordings that have impact around 80 Hertz and above, but I've noticed on some recordings where I'm used to there being a deeper rumble, it's there, but it hasn't got the presence that I wish it did. A nice example, and I'm not suggesting these are quite on the level of them, but if I listen to the Imperians, they have this incredible ability to be neutral, but have this beautiful sense of sub-bass that hits when it needs to, and it's behind and beneath all of the other music. That's probably the one thing I feel is lacking from the AF1120s, is every now and again I know the recording has that depth and I don't quite get it, but everything else is just beautiful. So to put that into perspective, I listened to the AF1120s alongside a number of other really well respected flagship earphones that I happen to have in my collection. So let's walk through them now and I'll explain what I was hearing. I'm going to start with the Noble Audio Kaiser 10s. These are my custom monitors, so these have been molded specifically for my ears. If you're not familiar with custom IEMs, it's a process where they take the same sorts of innards as are in the various other earphones I'm going to talk about, but they place them inside a mold that is made based on your exact shape of your ear, the outer and the inner ear canal. So it means that these tend to have a slight benefit in sound quality because they are customized, the insertion depth is guaranteed, and the people working on tuning them know exactly the canal properties because it's actually part of the earphone itself. So you do tend to get a slight benefit in custom IEMs, and the Noble K10s, when they were released and for many, many years, were generally considered one of the very best IEMs on the market. To this day, I still love them, I thoroughly enjoy them, and they're a go-to for me for particularly noise isolation, but also for the sound that they provide. And what that sound is quite a bass-oriented, warm, rich and lush sound. If you could criticize anything on them, they're lacking a little bit of air in the treble, but everything else is beautifully laid out, and they do have that beautiful bass that really can get you into the groove with music. If you're listening to tracks that have a bit of extra rhythm to them, the K10s pick that up really nicely. So in listening to the two side by side, and I should mention, the K10s were worth about $1,600 US from memory when I bought them. So these are literally double the price of the AF1120s, and keeping in mind some of that is for the custom molding. But today you can still buy a universal version of the K10s for around about the same price as the AF1120s. What I found with the comparison between the K10s and the AF1120s was that whilst I felt like there was a little bit of bass missing, as I've already mentioned, from the AF1120s, and therefore they didn't kind of have the groove that something like the K10 does, what they absolutely did do better was separate the sound, give me a better sense of space in the soundstage, and the ability to pick out individual mid-range and treble notes from within the overall soundstage. Now the K10s are excellent in that regard, so it's not as though they're a slouch in that area, but it just goes to show how amazingly good the AF1120s are. They're a masterful piece of tuning in terms of the amount of space, separation and detail they provide, but without ever feeling like it's disjointed and losing coherency. So to summarize this one, if I'm looking for something that makes me want to bob my head, I'd probably still look at the K10s over something like the AF1120s if I was to own a pair. Having said that, if I'm looking for overall musical clarity and just the ability to explore the music and really understand what's going on, I'd probably go for the AF1120s because they're still highly enjoyable, very immersive, and literally the only thing they're missing is that little bit of groove that the K10s have. And that's a huge statement for a universal up against a custom at the level that the K10s were at in their day. My next comparison point was the Campfire Audio Andrometers. These are well known and well regarded in the industry as an exceptional earphone, particularly for those looking for a lot of detail and very clean, smooth treble. So in comparison, it was no surprise that the Andrometers won out in terms of their treble detail, and they've got more treble energy as well. It's incredibly smooth thanks to the technologies used by Campfire Audio with their treble production, but it's definitely stronger treble as well than what you hear from the AF1120s. In contrast, what I noticed though was that the mid-range on the AF1120s was much stronger in its sense of presence. I'm not saying it was a lot louder and it didn't dominate the sound signature, but it had presence and weight to it that's lacking a little bit from the Andrometers. Not to say the Andrometers are worse, it's just a very different presentation. It's very hard to beat the treble from the Andrometers. It is incredibly smooth, it is incredibly detailed and resolving. But I did find that the overall balance from the AF1120s probably had me leaning back to them from a general enjoyment point of view. So again, I'd say if I had both on hand, I'd look for the Andrometers when I was really wanting to kind of dissect the music without getting unenjoyable and cold and analytical. They're more of a tool to really hear every last tiny detail in the music, but more so at the treble end of the spectrum. In the case of the AF1120s, they're going to give you a bit more emotion because of that mid-range, and they're still going to give you great detail, but without really pulling it to pieces and showing you every single tiny little sound. It's actually really hard to describe the differences between them, because in some ways the AF1120 is doing in the mid-range exactly what the Andrometer is doing in the treble. They're different presentations, but both incredibly well separated and detailed while still being extremely coherent. So for lovers of mid-range, I'd say you'd lean towards the AF1120. For lovers of treble, smooth and clean and detailed treble, the Andrometers would probably be a better fit. Once again though, the Andrometers are going to cost a whole lot more money, and whilst they're a really nice design and they've got the metal housings that are beautifully anodized, they're not as comfortable and simple to wear as something like the AF1120s. So hopefully you're starting to see that the AF1120s are a really compelling offering at the price when they're stacking up so well against major flagship options from other brands. I probably shouldn't say flagship in relation to the Andrometers because they aren't technically the flagship of Campfire Audio anymore, but at the time that I purchased them they were. For me, my final comparison was probably the most interesting and surprising. The FitEar ToGo 334s are another one of those earphones that has a real reputation, and it's almost, at least in the past, been a legendary IEM. And that's because it's hand assembled in Japan to meticulous levels of quality, beautiful build, and from a sound point of view, it introduced a level of clarity and focus in vocals that was previously unheard of and has been hard to match for many IEMs since. So knowing how much I enjoyed the vocal presentations of the FitEar ToGo 334s, I was really interested to see how the 1120s stacked up against the 334s. After going back and forth many times, and not just A-Bing, because A-Bing can be a bit of a problem if you're jumping quickly between one headphone and the next, you'll find that your ears are impacted by what one earphone has enhanced or pulled back. And so all of a sudden one earphone might sound overly bright because the previous earphone was a little bit warm. So instead of that, what I tend to do is listen to a series of tracks. I might listen to 3, 4 or 5 tracks on one earphone and then go back and listen to those same tracks on the other earphone. Interestingly, what I found was that the AF1120s and the TG334s were giving me a really similar presentation overall, but the TG334 had a slightly drier treble that was a little bit more pronounced, and I actually found it took away from the overall enjoyment ever so slightly. At the same time, the 1120s were doing a better job of focusing the vocals and giving me a bigger sense of space without losing that laser sharp focus that I've always enjoyed from the TG334s. So to me, the 1120s actually clearly outdid the TG334s for vocals, for the thing that the 334s have really made their name on. to me, the 1120s go above and beyond and actually improve on them. I have to admit, I went back and forth a few times to confirm that. I tried different tips because in my mind, the 334s have always been one of the absolute kings of vocals. And yet, no matter how I tried it, no matter what track I tried it on, the 1120s are really just that good. So what we're talking about here is stacking up an $850 IEM against 2,200, I'm talking Australian dollars here, $2,200 IEM here, a 1,600 odd US dollar IEM in the Andromedas, and another 1,600 odd US dollar IEM in the Nobles, at the time of purchase at least. So what I'm saying here is that I've just put an 850 Australian dollar earphone up against earphones worth over 2,000 and somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000, depending on when you might have purchased them, dollars, and yet time and time again the AF1120s are holding their own in terms of doing a similar thing differently as the Andromedas, or doing things better in some cases than the Noble K10s, and vice versa. Sometimes these two also did other things better than the AF1120s, but it was absolutely holding its own with these two. And then it turned around and cleanly beat the FitEar TG334, so more than $2,000 worth here in Australia, clearly beat them at what the party piece is for the TG334. And so hopefully you can see now why I'm absolutely enamored by the AF1120s. To me, they are hands down the best mid-range earphone I've tried, and I've owned so many earphones over the years. I've listened to others as well, and these just consistently wow me with the quality of their mid-range. The only thing I wish they did was give a little bit more sub bass, as I mentioned before, and if they were able to do that without messing up the tuning at all, these would be hands down the greatest earphone I'd ever listened to. And that sounds like hyperbole, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but honestly, even with all these other great earphones in my collection, while I've had the 1120s here on loan, I've kept going back to them to listen to them over my other earphones. They're that enjoyable and they perform that well. So if that shocked you as much as it shocked me, I'd highly recommend you check out Audiofly's earphones, particularly the AF1120. The others are brilliant. The 100 and the 140 that I've listened to the Mk2 versions. I'd previously listened to the 180s and they're great as well. I'm assuming they're even better in the Mk2 version. I just can't say enough that Audiofly is a brand that you should absolutely think about if you're looking for earphones. Their tuning is top notch, the quality of the design, both from an ergonomics, but also a long-term hard wearing point of view, is excellent. There's just nothing to fault with their products at all, and price-wise, they're cheaper than many of their competitors, and as you've just heard, perform at least as well, and in some cases better. Just to reiterate, I would recommend the 1120s for people that are looking for neutrality and those that love mid-range vocals. So it's not mid-range forward, it's not clouding or muddying anything else, it's just putting everything in such beautiful balance and so well separated that the mid-range is there for you to focus on without losing anything else. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, check out the links below where you can pick those up and support the channel a little bit. Also, don't forget about the Patreon giveaways. I've put links down below as well, so you can win the Ibasso DC01 or the DC02. And as I said at the start, if you're interested in reviews of the Metzer Empyrean headphones, the Bottlehead mainline headphone amplifier, or the SMSL SP200 THX amplifier, make sure you hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you hear when they're posted, and I look forward to seeing you here next time on Passion for Sound.